Hello, I'm Dr. Tara Palmatier of shrinkformen.com. If you have a question or would like to schedule a session with me, you can reach me at shrinkformen@gmail.com. The topic of this video is DARVO, which stands for Deny, Attack, and Reverse Victim and Offender. I've used this concept quite a lot. This is from an article I published back in January 2011. So for those of you who've been reading or watching my material through the years, you will recognize this term, but it may be new for some of you. Okay, here we go. Have you ever wondered why your narcissistic or borderline spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, or ex is able to do and say the most hurtful, underhanded, and contemptible things and then portray themselves as the innocent victim? Do you marvel at how they're able to aggress and then convincingly accuse others, usually their victims, of the very same abusive behaviors and attitudes of which they're actually guilty? Well, wonder no more. The answer may be DARVO. Presto, changeo, DARVO, because it really is a magical transformation that occurs within the crazy space between the ears of narcissists, borderlines, histrionics, etc. Dr. Jennifer Freyd of the University of Oregon identified the concept she calls DARVO back in the 1990s at the tail end of the repressed sexual abuse memories hysteria. Some of you might remember I think it was the McMartin trial about satanic child ritual abuse. Anyway, it was a whole thing where psychologists, unfortunately, were implanting false memories of childhood sexual abuse in their clients. Anyway, you can Google that if you're interested in it. In spite of its dubious origins, DARVO is a useful concept with broader applications than Dr. Freyd seems to have originally considered. She writes about DARVO in conjunction with her work on betrayal trauma, also known as trauma bonding, which I discuss in articles on my website, which you can find by clicking on the URL. According to Dr. Freyd's webpage, and I will quote what she has written. So this is a direct quote from Dr. Jennifer Freyd. DARVO refers to a reaction that perpetrators of wrongdoing, particularly sexual offenders, may display in response to being held accountable for their behavior. The perpetrator or offender may deny the behavior, attack the individual doing the confronting, and reverse the roles of victim and offender, such that the perpetrator assumes the victim role and turns the true victim into an alleged offender. This occurs, for instance, when an actually guilty perpetrator assumes the role of falsely accused and attacks the accuser's credibility or even blames the accuser of being the perpetrator of a false accusation. False accusations happen. They happen quite a lot. They frequently happen. False allegations of abuse happen in family court in order to get a tactical advantage in custody litigation. So from my understanding, DARVO seems to be a combination of projection, denial, lying, blame shifting, and gaslighting. Dr. Freyd notes that other observers have identified the same phenomenon using different terms. My clients frequently experience this behavior when they try to hold their partners or exes accountable. It also seems to be common behavior in most predators, bullies, high conflict individuals, and/or abusive personality disordered individuals. DARVO routinely occurs, as I mentioned, in high conflict divorce and/or custody cases in which false abuse allegations are used as a legal strategy. So how can we tell who is the liar? Who's the real victim? Who's the real aggressor? So, of course, not everyone who denies wrongdoing is engaging in DARVO. Many partners and exes of narcissists and borderlines have been accused of things they didn't do or of things that never happened. Naturally, when this happens, you deny the accusation and perhaps feel a little or a lot bewildered. How do you know if an individual's denial is the truth or an instance of DARVO? Freud proposes, and I quote here again, this is taken from her book, which you can find the reference to if you click the hyperlink in the About section on the video page. It's important to distinguish types of denial, for an innocent person will probably deny a false accusation. You think so, Jennifer? Thus, denial is not evidence of guilt. However, I propose that a certain kind of indignant self-righteousness and overly stated denial may in fact relate to guilt. I'm inserting something here, I'm editorializing, then I'll go back to the quote. The one thing that is often uncannily similar in the cases that I work with, in which my male clients are being falsely accused of domestic violence or emotional abuse, is this sort of indignant outrage by the accuser when people question them or point out inconsistencies in their stories. I mean, seriously, they could get a job on cable news at the amount of self-righteous indignation and outrage that they demonstrate when they are asked legitimate questions, and again, when inconsistencies in their stories are pointed out to them. Okay, I'm going to go back to Dr. Freud's quote. I hypothesize that if an accusation is true and the accused person is abusive, the denial is more indignant, self-righteous, and manipulative as compared with denial in other cases. Similarly, I have observed that actual abusers threaten, bully, and make a nightmare for anyone who holds them accountable or asks them to change their abusive behavior. This attack, intended to chill and terrify, typically includes threats of lawsuits, overt and covert attacks on the whistleblower's credibility, and so on. The attack will often take the form of focusing on ridiculing the person who attempts to hold the offender accountable. The attack will also likely focus on ad hominem instead of intellectual or evidential issues. Finally, I propose that the offender rapidly creates the impression that the abuser is the wronged one, while the victim or concerned observer is the offender. Figure and ground are completely reversed. The more the offender is held accountable, the more wronged the offender claims to be. Again, I see this all the time in my work. When you're trying to hold someone like this accountable, it's important that you stick with what you are, any facts or documentation that you have. Usually what the high conflict narcissist or borderline will do is they make emotional appeals. They don't have facts. So they try to hook into people's emotion or pity or sympathy, or to spread their sense of outrage around. That's how they manipulate. You can help yourself by keeping control of your emotions and sticking to the facts, but more on that later. So how can you demonstrate who the aggressor is during and after divorce? Because this is what's important here. In my experience, identifying the actual aggressor often becomes more evident in their behavior post-separation and or divorce. For example, the victim sends the accused continuous hostile messages via text, email, or our family wizard, despite having been asked, often countless times, to stop. The victim insists the accused meets in person and becomes incensed when the accused ignores or refuses the demand. The victim becomes angry when the accused sends a third party to avoid conflict at child exchanges. The victim becomes angry and accusatory when direct access to the accused is limited or denied. And finally, the victim bridles at the boundaries created by the accused to limit contact. sometimes filing court motions just to force contact with the accused. Now, isn't it odd how, in these examples, the alleged victim is the one who is seeking contact with the accused and then goes into a rage, or oftentimes, with the dads I work with, accuses them of not co-parenting because their ex-spouse doesn't want to be raged at, name called, bullied, etc. So this is why I regularly encourage clients to practice BIF communication. BIF is an acronym. It stands for brief, informative, firm, friendly. I don't like friendly. Friendly is too familiar. Friendly can cause boundary, attempts to encroach your boundaries. I think keep it business-like. Okay, communication. It's equally important to maintain control of your emotions in your communications with the narcissistic or borderline ex. When you engage in a pointless back and forth with them, it can be difficult for people like custody evaluators, lawyers, and judges to discern who the crazy is if you're both, no, you're the abuser, no, you're the abuser, no, you're the abuser. Just please don't do that. It's stupid, it's pointless, and you're going to look as nuts as the nutty person. So don't do it. I also frequently encourage clients to carry a recording device with them, know your state's recording laws, if some physical contact can't be eliminated. Actually, I'm more like a broken record on these 3 points, but I digress. Furthermore, if allegations of abuse persist post-divorce, it follows that at least one party does not feel safe. If the accuser believes the allegations to be true, then the accuser will feel unsafe. If the accusations are untrue, then the target of those accusations will feel unsafe. I'm going to repeat this. This is important. Write this down or copy and paste it from the article if you're in the middle of high conflict divorce and custody litigation, and share it with your attorney, okay? If the accuser believes the allegations to be true, then the accuser will feel unsafe. If the accusations are untrue, then the target of those accusations will feel unsafe, okay? If the accuser believes the accused is such a threat, it stands to reason they'd want to limit contact with their alleged abuser, right? Well, in the land of logic and reason and facts, yes, it does. But it is quite common in these cases for the borderline or the narcissistic ex to become enraged when you limit contact, either in writing or physically, because it limits their ability to bully you. And it's easier to bully someone in person and also to wear you down if you're getting those constant communications, right? Okay, I want to talk about high conflict persuasive blamers, which is a term William Eddy of the High Conflict Institute uses. And he describes the persuasive blaming tactics of high conflict individuals as such. This is a direct quote. Persuasive blamers persuade others that their internal problems are external, caused by something else or someone else. Once others are persuaded to get the problem backward, the dispute escalates into a long-term high conflict situation, one that few people other than persuasive blamers can tolerate. Getting the problem backward, end of quote, by the way, getting the problem backward is precisely what happens when DARVO occurs. To use Dr. Freud's words, figure and ground are completely reversed. I'm going to quote Eddy again. It's only the persuasive blamers of cluster B, that's the personality disorder category, who keep high conflict disputes going. They are persuasive, and to keep the focus off their own behavior, the major source of the problem, they get others to join in the blaming, end of quote. This is why many narcissists, borderlines, histrionics, and antisocials effectively employ smear campaign and mobbing tactics. That's a form of group bullying, or a group of people bullying one individual, when they target someone, be it a spouse, attorney, court evaluator, or therapist. By blaming others for everything that's wrong in their lives, they keep the focus off the real problem, and that is themselves and their characterological disorder. This seems to be the exact denial attack reverse victim and offender described by Dr. Freud. And I will include, I'm going to read another of Dr. Freud's quotes. The offender is on the offense, and the person attempting to hold the offender accountable is on the defense. Deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender work best together. How can someone be on the attack so viciously and be in the victim role? Future research may investigate the hypothesis that the offender rapidly goes back and forth between attack and reverse victim and offender. Now, if you're on the receiving end of this, it's crazy making. Your reputation, civil and parental rights are being attacked while the narcissistic or borderline partner or ex is playing the victim for all they're worth, trying to convince others of their distorted version of unreality, or let's just call it what it is, lies. Worse yet, many people believe crazy. Why? Because all of the accusations, all of the allegations are highly emotionally charged. So your average person who could be, not necessarily biased against men in the court system, just somebody wanting to help, but they see this woman who's very upset, crying, hysterical, or so angry that they think, well, she's so upset, he must have done something. Even some of my clients who know their narcissistic or borderline's wives' accusations and lies aren't true, sometimes doubt themselves and what they know to be reality. I believe that many narcissists, borderlines, and other pathological liars come to believe their own lies after telling them repeatedly. And in fact, there is research that demonstrates that. Now, I want to distinguish the different types of denial that there are. So abusers typically employ different types of denial. They have a whole melange of them. And perhaps you're familiar with some of the following ones. First, there's outright denial or gaslighting. That never happened. Don't know what you're talking about. There's minimization. It wasn't that bad. You're just so sensitive. You really need help. There's amnesia. I don't remember doing that. Can't hold me. You can't take anything seriously I say when I'm drunk. There's redefinition. I have a bad temper, so you shouldn't upset me. Okay, that's redefining the problem. The problem is the rage of the abusive person, and that they don't control it as opposed to anything you did or said. There's projection. You're abusive and controlling. You hurt me, when they're in fact abusive and controlling and have repeatedly hurt you. And there's conversion. Yes, I did wrong, but I'm a changed person now and I won't do it again. And then they might, throw in a little more redefinition. And you're a bad person if you don't forgive me and give me my 187th chance. Okay, Freud concludes, direct quote, the offender takes advantage of the confusion we have in our culture over the relationship between public provability and reality, and a legal system that has a certain history in this regard in redefining reality. Future research may test the hypothesis that the offender may well come to believe in her or his innocence via this logic. If no one can be sure she or he is guilty, then logically, they're not guilty, no matter what really occurred. The reality is thus defined by public proof, not by personal lived experience. End of quote. It may be difficult to sort out who is telling the truth in these cases. However, what I've found is that the high conflict individuals who engage in this behavior often cannot substantiate their claims, or they will just make up more lies to try to substantiate their claims. They're typically inconsistent over time, so pay close attention and document everything. This may help you to hang them with a rope of their own making if and when you need to prove what actually occurred, as opposed to their ever-evolving versions of the truth. Documentation is also helpful for you to combat the effects of their gaslighting and projection. Now, I'm going off script here. Oftentimes, when these individuals are confronted with evidence, with facts, sometimes with their own emails that they've written, say in deposition or in court, particularly women who have these issues, they will begin crying. And unfortunately, many men, particularly male attorneys, fall apart at the sight of a woman's tears. How I recommend handling that, and this is, you can discuss this with your attorney, is that if you suspect your ex or wife will start crying when she gets caught out in her lies, your attorney could say something like, well, Mrs. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Yeah, it can feel scary when you get caught in a lie. It can be scary. I can remember when my son got caught lying, he would cry because he was afraid of the consequences. So I'm sorry this is upsetting you, but I understand it. It doesn't feel good when you get caught in a lie. So he can have compassion and also educate the court or whomever needs educating that, yeah, she's crying because she just got busted, not because she's a victim. Failing tears, they will often bully, lie some more, and just rapid cycle through cry, lie, bully, cry, lie, bully, cry, lie, bully. They have a limited range of tools in their toolbox. So if the narcissist or borderline is threatening to call the police and make false allegations against you, and or you're considering divorce, it's extremely important that you document the abuse you're experiencing in a journal, a digital recorder, or some other medium. Abusive, persuasive blamers rely on the force of their emotions to sell their lies, half-truths, and distortions. Since most people are suckers for drama, especially in the form of a tearful, self-righteous woman, you'll need proof if you want to be believed. Think of it as making yourself DARVO proof. Again, I'm Dr. Tara Palmatier of shrinkformen.com. If you have a question or would like to schedule a session with me, you can reach me at shrinkformen@gmail.com. Thank you for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.